Simply put, a rate is just a ratio that compares two different kinds of units or measurements. So a couple of very common examples of rates are price per unit and measure per time unit. Price per unit, you might see cost per pound at a grocery store, price per ounce, cost per gallon of gasoline. Measurements per time. Two common examples of rates are price per unit or measure per time unit. We see price per unit as a rate when we shop. You may see cost per pound, price per ounce, even cost per gallon of gasoline is a very common rate. Measure per time unit is also a very common variation of rates. Speed limits are in miles per hour, so it's a measurement of distance over time. Heartbeat, beats per second. Rate of growth or decay, so it's growth or decay over time. Most real-world versions of rates have a denominator of 1. For example, you would never see 50 divided by 2 miles per hour on a speed limit sign. You would never see $2.68 per 2 pound. You would see $1.34 per 1 pound for the unit price. So we just turn the rate as a fraction into a decimal by dividing. That gives us our rate with a denominator of 1. Since that gives us a common denominator, it makes it very easy to compare rates. Speed is a great example of a common rate. You drive 300 miles on a road trip and it took you 5 hours. So we're looking for like the average speed in this case. About how fast were you going? We're looking at how many miles you traveled over how much time. That's 300 miles out of 5 hours. So that's 300 miles in 5 hours. If I divide that down so I have a denominator of 1, I'm going to end up with, so a little calculator moment if you need it, 60 miles per hour. So the unit comes from the word problem. If I know I had a numerator of 300 miles, I need to have miles as my numerator of my unit. If I had 5 hours as my denominator of my original rate, I need to have hours as my denominator of my unit. So I get miles per hour. Heart rate is a really commonly seen rate. Try it yourself. Put your fingers against your wrist or against your neck until you feel a pulse. Record how many or count how many heartbeats you feel in a minute. That will be your beats per minute. Put the total number of heartbeats in the numerator, and the number of minutes is going to be 1 because you're counting for 1 minute. Everyone's answer should differ. Another speed example, we have 450 miles in 9 hours. Again, if you have the option of putting time somewhere, it's always going to go in the denominator. We see unit of distance or unit of something per unit of time usually, so it's our denominator. 450 miles traveled in 9 hours. I want to turn that into a denominator of 1, so I'm going to divide it straight into a decimal. That's going to give me, a little calculator moment, 50 miles per hour. Many of the units for these rates are going to be very common. Miles per hour, cost per pound, things like that, dollar per hour, or cost per gallon. Just keep the rule of thumb. Time is going to go down in your denominator. Costs are usually going to go in your numerator. So let's try a shopping example. You bought 12 eggs at the store for $1.50. How much did each egg cost? Remember, one of the most common categories for rates is price per unit, or unit cost, or unit price. That's where that rule of thumb comes in. If I have a cost, in this case $1.50, it's going to go in my numerator. I'm paying $1.50 for every 12 eggs, $1.50 per 12 eggs. Since most rates are read as decimals, or values that have a denominator of 1, we're going to divide $1.50 by 12. Little calculator moment. It's going to give me 13 cents. So it's dollar amounts. It's 13 cents per egg. Remember, my numerator represented money. My unit, remember, it's a unit price, so cost per unit. In this case, the unit is egg. It might be per ounce, per pound, per cup. Try these 3 problems on your own. Remember, all rates are going to be written as either denominators of 1 or just simply put decimal answers. You need to remember that if you're given a value of time or a unit of time, it's usually going to go in your denominator. Units of cost or price usually going to go up in your numerator.